try to be simple and at the same time consistent, okay? Then we will have a second part with energy. What we produce, how much we produce, and how much we consume. And the way we do this, because you may not know what is the basic sources in Italy of energy. And then the main relevant infrastructures, of course there are many other infrastructures I on purpose did not mention, like railroad system. Has to do with energy, but it's not a carrier of energy. So now, the energy framework. The last national energy plan in Italy, what we call PEN, Piano Energetico Nazionale doesn't say much to you, it's Italian, right? As you can see, it's dated 1988, and this was immediately after the Chernobyl disaster. And since then, Italy practically got rid of nuclear energy, nuclear power station, which I personally believe was a mistake. But that is a fact. We got 3 years to implement it, and it was eventually implemented in 1991. It was largely inspired by European Community Energy Policy, which means emphasis, accent on development of renewables on the one hand, and reduction of consumption, no waste. These are the two main things. What do we mean with renewables? In this case we mean hydro, sun, wind, geothermal, tides, waves, and biomass. This is essentially what we mean with renewables. Hydro has been and is still the largest renewable source in many countries. In Italy, for sure it is. Now it's getting, there is a competition, as you will see, between hydro and sun, but always remember that you can trust on hydro, you never necessarily can trust on sun, because, for instance, during the night, you can have 50 gigawatts installed on sun, but during the night you will get 0. A peculiarity of the Italian country and of this Italian energy regulation is that, you have to trust me, I have no time to explain to you, but practically it's a patchwork. The global plan is a kind of patchwork of regional plans. Italy is divided into some 20 regions, let's say, about, just to remember the number. And each region has got its regional energy plan. And the overall one is a kind of patchwork of this. Important, you know, I am an electrical engineer, and many electrical engineers are biased in that they believe that is the electrical network the only place where energy is located on. They believe that they have to focus on lowering the losses in the electrical network. This is an obsession for us. But the major waste of energy is still in building and transportation. This is the two main aspects where you have to work to save energy. In that respect, electrical engineers are very good because not much energy is wasted in the electrical system. But still, the electrical network is a way to inject, is the best mean to inject renewables. With a lot of problems, as I will try to see, to show you. So here you have all the details of this building energy regulation. Now, the result of that we have a classification and the regulation of building energy efficiency. Every building has to get a kind of patent of certificate that sets it within a certain class, okay? And you pay more or less taxes. You can value more or less the building depending on this. It's very important. If a building is in A class, then you can get more money if you sell your house, for instance. Another important point is the electricity market. Electricity market is, has been implemented in Italy, as in practically all countries of Europe, and one of the main messages that I'd like to transmit to you is that the production from renewables benefits from incentives. I let you decide whether this is good or not. It's the collectivity that pays a lot. It's Carlo, Alberto Nucci, who pay the bill to the company, and part of this bill goes to incentive these renewables and incentive the research on these renewables. We have, okay, these are details which are useful to remember for Italian, CHIP 692 for 8 years, the green certificates, all these ways to a certain extent to be obliged to have at least a portion of your energy injected into the system that has to come from renewables. Of course, we are in Kyoto, and the Kyoto Protocol is one of the most famous protocols, still, I would say, by far the most famous protocol in the world concerning renewable energy, sustainability, and so on. This was translated into an Italian law. These are the details, law decrees. I don't want to spend time on this. You have just the elements in case one day you will be interested in this. Just to mention an important European directive in 2006, this is the name, which defines the objectives for improving energy efficiency. And this European directive has been taken into account by Italy, and in particular by the Action Plan for Energy Efficiency, which is not a strategic plan. It's an action plan. It's different, you know. Action plan is what is after a strategic plan. Practically speaking, the strategic plan has been made by Europe. We're just we're just implementing it, which was transmitted from the Italian government to the European Commission in July 2007. Another important European directive is 2009. As you can see, these are recent, these couple of years ago, practically speaking, which is the very popular 20-20-20 package. I think you know that we have to reduce by 20% in 2020 CO2 emissions. You have to have 20% at least of renewables in your, I'm talking not about electricity, the overall energy of your country has to be 20% coming from renewables. Indeed, this is not exactly right, because depending on the country in Europe, you can have a little bit less than 20%. For instance, in Italy, this is set at 70%. But remember one thing, this is 70% of the overall energy, it's not electrical energy. In electricity, in the network, we have much more than 70% from renewables. This is some other misunderstanding that people not necessarily have clear. So this is 70% of the overall transportation, heating, and so on. Now, okay, there is another, I was asked to give you some elements. So this is another law decree, which is very popular in Italy, is the so-called Conto Energia. Why am I mentioning to you Conto Energia? Because Conto Energia is a law decree that defines the incentives for photovoltaics. PV, I apologize, I thought you were electrical engineer. PV means photovoltaics, is international acronym for photovoltaics. So PV and thermal solar plants, you know that you can get energy from the sun basically in two main ways. One is photovoltaics, silicon conversion into electricity of the energy from sun, and the other one is thermal. So I mean, just the thermal, the heat that is coming from the sun that you can use without passing through a conversion in electricity. We had 5 Conto Energia in these years, and now we have the 5th one operating, and this is a law decree that gives, let's say, provides 20 years of incentives from the date of commissioning of a certain plant. And depending on power, I mean the size of the plant, and the integration of the plant, you can have more or less benefits. If you perfectly integrate your photovoltaic panel, for instance, in a roof of a building which is perfectly integrated because it's very difficult, for instance, that somebody go and steal it. It doesn't impact the environment. If you have all these photovoltaic panels at ground, the Greens party are very happy, but they forget that the ground behind is totally lost in 5 to 6 years, is dead land. Additionally, these photovoltaics on the ground are stolen by night. So now in Italy, you have, not only in Italy, in several countries, you have to light in the night these photovoltaic plants, because if not, people go and so you spend energy. So you see, not necessarily everything is positive. There are a lot of drawbacks in that. So just to give you some numbers, in 2010, we got 3,459 megawatt of solar plants with a net incentive of 773 million euros for a production of about almost 900 gigawatt hours. Compared to 2009, this average incentive reduction for kilowatt hour from 0.435 to 0.407, so we get a decrease. And these, I do not go through all the other numbers that you have, and you can read yourself, but I will show you some histograms that give you a better idea on the tendency of this. Just to complete this first part, other incentives are from the so-called green certificates mentioned before, omnicomprehensive tariff, dedicated retirement, exchange on site, and CIP6. These are things that you can surf on the internet and have the idea of what all these items are incentives which have been basically paid by the collectivity in order to get this huge development of photovoltaic plants and of renewables sources in the Italian electrical system. To conclude this part, very recently we got a document which is available on the internet, which is called National Energy Strategy, which is kind of close to that last official document which was released in 1988. So we are now going to have another one. What is interesting is that this one is subject to public consultation. So people go on the internet and can send comments. Indeed, in this specific period, the Italian group of Italian professors of electrical power systems, which was previously chaired by Professor Alberto, and now I am chairing this, it was engaged in collecting some comments, some ideas, and transmit them to our government. Just to, which are the main points this document is dealing with? 7 priorities. Promotion of energy efficiency. Very important. Energy efficiency is a tricky concept. Efficiency, generally speaking, is getting more, doing less. This is the efficiency. But if you think at the efficiency in real world, efficiency has a lot to do with economics. It's a much less simple concept that you can imagine. And to my students, I always use this example. You know what is a pump hydro plant? Is you have a dam and you have some station, and so what you do is that by night time you pump water into the dam, and then by daytime the water flows down and produces electricity. I think it's very clear, even if you are a lawyer, that overall you lose energy. I mean, the overall efficiency of the process is bad because you spend more energy in pumping the water than the energy that you get back, because there are losses. So why we do that? We are stupid, because we spend more energy than the energy that we get back. No, we are not stupid. It's because we use energy with low price, with low cost during night. and we obtain energy with higher cost, higher price during daytime. This is a very simple thing that tells you that energy efficiency is a very tricky thing, and needs definition, needs clear definition, and has to do with several aspects, so there is no time now to. Second, promotion of competitive gas market. So not only electricity market, but gas market. 3, sustainable development of renewables. 4, development of electricity market integrated with the European Union one. The network in Italy is certainly connected to the network of Europe. It's a huge overall network. Market has to be integrated. There should be easiest possibility for international market exchanges of electricity, commercial exchanges. A refinery and fuel distribution network restructuration. It's an old fuel network. 6, sustainable development of national production of hydrocarbons. There is a tradition in Italy. We have to repower it. And governance modernization. This is not immediately related to energy, but certainly we need a modernization of our governance system. These are the 7 priorities, and with this I terminate my first part. Let's go now quickly to the second part. If you have any question, we can have at the end. If there is something that is not clear, stop me anytime. Don't be shy, just stop me, okay? So now we have energy. Second part, production and consumption. I try to compare what is, I think it's useful to compare what is being produced in Italy and what is being produced in Europe. So you have a comparison. You see here in Italy, the total in equivalent tons, mega equivalent tons, is 175.5. We import of this 149.5, which means 85%. So we are a country that depend on the other ones. Amazing, right? And then you can see how this total is subdivided. Solid fuels, oil product, gas, you see a lot of it. And you see for instance, solid fuels, we import even more than 100%. You can ask, how is that possible? That you take more than what? Yes, we import more than we need because we have strategical reservoirs in our country. So this happens in many other countries. Then oil products, 96.6%. Practically, we depend on the foreign countries. Gas, 90.5. Nuclear, 0. I told you, 0. Renewables, only 9.4%. Electricity, the import is 3.8, and of course the import net is 100%, but this is just the quantity which is being imported. Urban solid waste is 0.9. If you see, this is for Italy. For Europe, you see this situation, and you see that Europe is only 50%, around 50%, depending on other countries like Africa, for instance, for the gas, for instance, or other USA and other countries of the world. So Europe overall is a much better situation, and you can see all the other items. I do not go through it because you have time to do that. But the main message is Europe 54.1. Now, if we now compare the gross internal consumption of Italy and Europe in 2010, don't think that I was lazy and I didn't want to show you the last results, because these are the last official results that I could get. These are taken from a document which was printed in October 2012. So it's like this. I mean, you can go to some site and find, but this is the let's say, formal, official, latest data. So you see here all the types of source gas, nuclear, renewables, urban solid waste, electricity import, solid fuels, and oil products. And you can see here on the left what is the situation in Italy, and on the right the situation in Europe. And you see, for instance, that we have here as you can see. There are some parts which are missing. For instance, in Italy, we do have electricity import, as you can see, 2.3%. We do not have it in Europe. We have a percentage of solid fuels in Italy which is lower than Europe. We have 7.6 instead of 15.9. A much similar situation concerning oil products. Gas more in Italy than Europe, and nuclear is 0 in Italy and 13.5 in Europe. This gives you the idea. Then we have now another interesting chart which shows the gross internal consumption, and this is, you can see in Italy, the total is here, and you can see all the components of this. The big one here, gas, you can see, and oil products. So all the rest, electricity, urban solid waste, renewables, is still very low. In the most recent year, these renewables, the green one, would increase. If you, yes, you could dash this, it increased, certainly it increased. You will see that better in the electricity consumption only. And this is the situation in Europe. You can see in Europe it's a little bit different, you see. Compare, for instance, what you can see with oil products and gas in Italy. And in Europe you can see a more homogeneous situation concerning the gross internal consumption. So let's say there is a more virtuous behavior in Europe. We are trying to catch up. I repeat, in the most recent years, concerning renewables, 2011 and 2012, we are doing well, much better. Now, this is another pie chart concerning the net final consumption per sector: house, fishing, agriculture, services, transportation, industry, and other. What is the message of this? Look at, for instance, house. House is part of it, but is 25% in Italy, 26.6% in Europe, which means that our standard of life is practically as the average standard in Europe. And this also means that all the photovoltaic panels that we put on our houses can, in the most optimistic case, work for the 25% of the overall picture. So realistically, we cannot think of supplying our country with solar panels, practically speaking. Still, you see the amazing importance of industry and transportation. Transportation cannot at present work with solar panels. Industry cannot at present work with that. So still in the next years, I think Europe and Italy have to rely on oil and fossil fuels. What is mandatory is to preserve environment. So carbon sequestration, filters, power station. This is very important. And this is what I was mentioning before. This is just the installed electrical power in megawatt in Italy. And you can see, again, here you have these are megawatts. So we have this total installed power, which is increasing very much. And this is one of the results of the liberalization of the market. Before the market liberalization, Italy did not have the installed power capable of feeding their internal needs. Liberalization had this effect. Now in Italy we do have power installed more than what we need. The capacity is larger. And you see big part of fossil, nice part of hydro, but this part does not increase as we would like. disregardable is geothermal, nuclear is in 90, you see, nuclear, it is not even put here because at 89 it was terminated, as I told you. Then here we have geothermal. What we do have interesting is wind and power. This is an amazing increase. You can see that in 2011, wind and power together were as much as hydro in Italy, and now they are more than that. But again, remember, you cannot think that you can have this. I mean, hydro is totally usable. Wind and power is only a percentage of that, because by night you forget about solar. I said wind and power, so I had to say wind and photovoltaics. My apologies. So, interesting to see is the photovoltaic electric power in megawatt connected to the grid. Look at here. This is the result of those conto energia, of all these things that I mentioned at the beginning. Look at here. In 2007, practically nothing. 2008, we have 338, and which is the annual amount, which has to be added to what was existing before. So in the red, you see what was before, plus 2008. Look at 2009. In red, you see what is progressively increasing, you know, and in green, you have only what that year was installed. And you go up to 2011, the maximum, and then in 2012, you see this green is decreased because the incentives are now lower. So we do have still an increase of the cumulated installed photovoltaic power, but that year, 2012, we are back as 2010. So there is a limit that we have reached. This is interesting, is another chart that shows you what you see is in all these years, you see the percentage of the size of the photovoltaic plant. You see 4 colors. The blue one is huge plants, larger than 1 gigawatt. Of course, we are not talking about roof photovoltaics. We are talking about these field meadows full of solar photovoltaic panels. And this, you see, had a big increase in the years 2009, 2010, and 2011. Now, back to the origin. We realized, in my opinion, properly realized, that it is not good to have huge power installations with photovoltaics in meadows. This is not good. It creates a lot of problems to the system. When you have a cloud that covers that, all of a sudden, pump, you miss a huge power, and so the network is not capable of reacting well. And so you see the orange part, which is practically stable, and you have the small plants which had a huge diffusion at the beginning, and then a decrease, and now they are getting back. You see, the green part is the part of the small photovoltaic plants. The wind power installed per year is this one. And it is nice to see the situation in the world and how Italy is standing compared to the rest of the world. So China is the big one, USA, Germany, Spain, India, and Italy. We are not bad at all, as you can see. Better than France, better than UK, better than Canada, better than Portugal. And this is not very bad at all. So Italy is doing well, I would say, concerning these forms of renewables. Spending a lot of money, because still these renewables are much more expensive. Now, I would like to, I think I have to conclude my presentation. Maybe there is a material on the main infrastructures which I deliver to you, no? And maybe if we have time, I can go through it at the end. But I think that the material that I will very quickly go through it is self-explanatory. Now I would like to mention you something which is probably interesting for you. Have you ever heard about the word smart grid? Did you? Smart grid? Have you any idea what is a smart grid? A smart grid is this one. This, as you can see, is there is part of this picture which is very much traditional. You have a central power plant and you have a transmission network that provides the distribution of the electrical energy to offices, to industrial plants and so on. Nowadays, and this was the old system, which was smart indeed. It's not necessarily only the modern system which is smart, also the old system was smart. But what you can see here is that nowadays you have this need, this requirement of introducing renewable energies into the network. And so you have here houses with photovoltaics, you have wind powers. In this case you have some wind powers, wind turbines which are virtually connected with some solar panels, with some microturbines to form what is called a virtual power plant. So what is this? This is several distributed sources of energy, many of them from renewable energy, that need to be coordinated and synchronized, properly operated in order to form what we call a virtual power plant. Some small parts, if well coordinated, they eventually form a power plant. You can probably understand that all these things, the fact that you don't know when sun will disappear, because, for instance, the shadow of a cloud will produce that, or you don't really know when the wind will stop blowing, all these things make very important the requirement of smartness distributed throughout the network. So you need a lot of ICT, information and communication technology spread around in the network. So this is the concept of smart grid. It's a grid in which you have a massive amount of renewables. These renewables are non-dispatchable. You cannot say, I can rely on this at that time. No, you can do that with oil, you can do it with gas, to a certain extent with hydro, but you cannot do that with sun and with wind. So you really have to be flexible, smart to run this. So this is the smart grid. In part, the traditional, well-performing network, and in part, this new one. And so this is a very hot topic where practically all electrical engineers carry out research. And my colleague and friend, Roberto Caldon, will give you some information on a project that in Italy is being carried out on this topic. I just wanted to very quickly mention to you the main relevant infrastructures. This part, and really I have to conclude, is, you see, divided into 5 subsections. The first one is main information, and then I thought it worth to put the water supply infrastructure, electricity supply infrastructure, communication system infrastructure, and gas supply infrastructure. Of course, there are many other infrastructures which are important, but are less related to energy than these ones. So, apart from the main information on the country, Italy, and how it looks like, and geography, and population, economy, gross domestic product, which has nothing to do with the cultural level of a country, unfortunately, is often used as a symbol of prosperity and level and quality of a country, but many important aspects are not included in the gross domestic product. And I'm certainly not the first one who's mentioning this. And some historical notes that you can read by yourself. And then, water supply infrastructure. So these are the items and the main figures concerning the water supply Italian infrastructure. Here is the water consumption in households in Italy, how it is divided. Electricity supply infrastructures. One good aspect of the liberalization of the electricity market is that all these things are now available on the internet. You can go and really have a lot of details which were secrets years ago when we had a vertically integrated system. Now everything is on the network, can be seen. This is the 180 kV network at 31st December 2010, and this is 220 kV. As you can see, Italy is a longitudinally developed network with you can see all these dots correspond to some substation, national grid. There are some substations which are not belonging to a non-national grid because there are private, small private parts of the network. Communication system infrastructure, which was also fully liberalized in 1998. And here you can see the main parts of it, telephone systems, broadcast media, internet hosts, and so on. Gas supply infrastructure. You can go through this part, and you see here the gas network in Italy, which is overall over than 31,500 kilometers of length, and which is divided practically in 4 main species, depending on the pressure measured in bar. First one, if it is larger than 24, second species if it is between 12 and 24, third 12 and 5, and fourth lower than 5. This is the main structure of it, and how it is included in the European gas grid. So, I repeat, this part is something that you can go through it because I think it's quite sufficiently detailed in the notes. I strongly believe that to be effective, I cannot give you too much material in a short time. I hope that the main message got you. You got the main message. I hope that if you have any question, you're free. But now I think it's time to give the floor to my colleague and friend Roberto. And maybe you have to give me back the USB key because my computer cannot work, so we have to put it. So while we are making this operation, if you have any question, please feel free to ask me. If you have any question while I'm doing this. This side. Qualcosa di short circuit. It's not. I think it's this side. Can you kindly help us, because here it's everything written in Japanese. Yes, and there is here a presentation that needs to be. So apparently you don't have questions. No.
So if you can, thank you for the presentation. I just want to ask, you have this strategy which is kind of like normally developed by the European Union, then you have like regional maybe program, then you have country action plan, and well, I was wondering, does this action plan is supported like with the budget? I mean, is it approved during the approval of the budget, annual budget or forecast for coming 2 or 3 years? How does it work?
So your question is whether this is something which stands on a kind of national government base, or it is decoupled by that?
No. For instance, many strategic documents, they don't have any financial support. So it's not clear how much will be allocated for the implementation of the strategy. But when it comes to the action plan, there is a specific actions and measures to be achieved during the specific period of time. And does it supported by the financial, the budget?
I mean, so far, yes, it was
At the
certainly.
beginning of the development.
Yeah, so far it was. I mean, this conto energy and these things are clearly state the amount and clearly, yes, I would say yes. Now, concerning the next one, I think it implemented. Yes, and I if you have any of a take think that you have some example in mind, have some strategical direct are almost point of support. Am I
Yes,
capturing
yes,
it?
Yes. Actually, a list of a lot of can be named. Have very nice papers, strategies developed with institutions, specific energy efficiency, reduction of technical losses and so on, and everything is included in the paper. But when it comes to the financial issues, it's problem. It's not in the
Yeah, exactly. So I think there we should make a clear distinction between those that are so-called white papers for future suggestions and indications and so on by law decrees. It has to stand financial capacity of doing that.